And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Hefner. That was most informative. Next on our agenda is public participation, and first is Ms. Murphy with, and as you're walking up, I will read our policy. The board welcomes and encourages public participation. We respectfully ask that you adhere to the procedures and the decorum provided in the board policy. Your comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and Mr. Harris will be holding up the cards. Questions asked during public participation and placed in writing will receive a written response in a timely manner, and Mr. Bounds will take those questions. Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. Good evening. At the last couple board meetings, it was mentioned that District 5 may finally be experiencing some enrollment growth, even though it is still 61 students below the numbers presented before the bond referendum in 2008. Also mentioned was that though District 5 grew only 170 students in the last 2 years, the budget increased by over $16 million. With school board elections in November, it's important to note that Mr. White and Ms. Baumgartner voted for the tax increase and voted for raising their salaries by 156%. Mr. Turner, however, voted against the tax increase, and he also voted against the board's pay raise. My concern tonight is relevant to the budget increase and the burden to taxpayers. Shortly, you will be addressing an enrollment policy, but there are other related policies that are even more important that need attention. It is ongoing that I hear that District 5 is not properly verifying residency and is allowing students who reside outside of the district to attend our schools. By doing so, the tuition for these students spelled out in board policy would not be collected to offset the expenses related to educating them. In other words, District 5 taxpayers pick up the tab. The issue isn't necessarily with the parents who want their children to attend our schools because of the many good things we do here. The issue is with the board if you aren't enforcing the policies and the accompanying tax increases we must bear. A couple years ago, Mike Cummings, who was the deputy auditor with Lexington County, spoke to the board. He recommended a surefire way of determining residency when registering for school. Require a copy of the parent's vehicle registration, in addition to other documents collected by the district. Mr. Cummins said most families own at least one car. For those families without a car, and there are some, other documents can be presented to prove residency. Mr. Cummings said that the registration indicates the street address, which would determine the school district, and also where they vote and where they pay school taxes. He said it's a no-brainer. I'm wondering, without out-of-district students, would these enrollment reports still reflect an increase or the trend a decrease? Please appropriately amend your policies to ensure residency. Here's a Freedom of Information Act request for the number of students who are attending the schools in their home districts and attendance areas who aren't, Also, a comment just after hearing the construction update. While it's important to have an update as to the progress of the construction for these multi-million-dollar projects, it's equally important, if not more so, to provide, along with an update, an accounting of the actual cost compared to the budgets. It's standard procedure for other districts to provide this information, and I'm requesting that you do that for us here too. Thank you.
All right. The next is Peter Lozan, excuse me, from Irmo High School.
Thank you. Tonight I come before you for two purposes. One is about our salaries, and we have lovely school facilities, we have lovely technology. Our teachers could use some of that generosity. Our staff members could use some of that generosity. As you are thinking about forming the budget for the coming year, it's important to remember that the staff is part of this reason why the school district is so excellent. We've lost a lot of great teachers to other school districts because of, quite honestly, money reasons. They've gone across the dam, they've gone to Richland 2. Richland 1 got a 2% increase on top of STEP for their teachers this year. I understand that we are in tight budgetary times because of the reforming of the distribution of education funds. However, somewhere in the budget, we would appreciate a nod towards increasing the salaries for teachers and staff. Thank you. The other topic to come before you tonight is the evaluation program for teachers. We don't like it, quite honestly. No one wants to have their salary tied to tests that are not valid or verifiable. The value-added measures is still a mystery to everybody. There's a computer somewhere in somebody's office that gets to decide whether or not you are a good teacher, and no one knows what that formula is. So we do not like the value-added measures. You have a choice. There's also something called a local option. We do not want the local option to include test scores, please. The local option can be anything you guys decide. It could be based on professional development. It could be based on classroom observations. It could be based on whether or not it snows on Christmas. It's a local option. You guys get to decide what that evaluation portion is from our district. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you very much. I do want to just address something that, and I've heard a lot of into all these forums, some information that just is being bantered around about, number one, about the budget. And I want to make it very clear that the General Assembly votes on the amount of money per child that school districts receive. And that's the major source of our funding. And I'm not quite sure, we had dropped down to 1997 levels at some point. I'm not quite sure now. Mr. Bounds, I believe we should be funded at what you just told me.
2,700, we're funded at 2,120. I'm not the expert. Mr. Richardson, like, is that about?
About 2,700 is where we should be, and we're currently funded at about 2,100 per student. So you can imagine that $600 per student makes a significant hit. In the meantime, our utilities, they don't take into account that we're not getting that much money. Everything else we do consistently have the highest salaries in the Midlands, and maybe not position by position, but certainly we do try to do that. In recent years, we've been able to give some salary increases. That certainly is the board's intent whenever we can. But we are limited. 90% of our budget is tied to personnel issues. In this past budget, we lost millions of dollars that did not come to some of the other to our district and some of the other larger districts. And so we have to make up this revenue some way. Otherwise, you've only got 90% of your budget. How do you deal with that? So I think it's very important to realize that the board and the administration works very hard, and we don't want to go backwards. It's very important. We do not want to go backwards. And so we need to certainly address members of our General Assembly and plead with them to get us back to where we need to be. Right now, it's all on our shoulders. Also, I want to talk about, there's a lot of talk about, and it's all campaign rhetoric, about the board pay adjustment and the percentage being thrown around. Let's give it the real facts. The school board members, at least since the 1970s, we couldn't even go back before then, maybe since the 1960s, school board members were making $3,750. That's based on 1970s level. I am sure that, I don't know what the rate, how much the average salary was or anything else, but if last year when it was $3,750, that did not keep up. And the amount of work, the amount of behind the scenes work, that's very important. Using the consumer price increase, it We adjusted it to 9,600, which I do believe every single member of this board deserves, and future board members and past board members. So I'm very proud that we are valuing the service of board members just as we value the service of all our administrators and value the service of all of our teachers and all of our staff members. It's very important because service is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. I appreciate that opportunity to be able to clear a lot of those misperceptions, misinformation that is being bantered about. Next, we will have the action agenda, items considered in executive session, and I will take a motion for 2A. Mr. White.
I'll make a motion
I make a motion that we approve the selected employment items and listed as item 2A in our agenda.
Ms. Bumgarner, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, that passes 5-0. Let's see, I think that's all in executive session. Next is the discussion agenda.